Whoa! Welcome to the What's Up Verdict podcast. We fashion ourselves cinematic judge and jury. My name is JJ Carter. I'm here with my co-host, Alec Burgess.
Let's get it.
We appreciate you tuning in. Go ahead and hit that follow, subscribe, like, bell notification buttons. You can keep up with all of our episodes, new content, everything we're doing. Also, tell a friend about us. Help us grow the podcast. Tell your family about us. Tell a speech therapist about us. We probably need one.
100%.
Yeah.
I drop my G's and run on sentences. Yeah.
I mean, I just never stop talking. So sometimes I do it without taking a breath at all. Depends on how worked up I am about the movie we're talking about. And this movie that we're talking about is a continuation, week 3 of our biopics, whatever, movies about real people month.
And there we go.
Yeah, there we go. That's the new name of them. And it's The King's Speech. It was released December 25th, 2010. It was written by David Seidler. It was directed by Tom Hooper. It stars Colin Firth, Geoffrey Rush, Helena Bonham Carter, Derek Jacobi, Robert Portal, Richard Dixon, Paul Trussell, Adrian Scarborough, and what's his name? What's the brother's name? Why can't I think of that actor? Because he's not on the top of the list.
I was hoping you would be able to tell me because I had the same problem. I couldn't remember.
The worst part is I can see him.
Yeah, I mean, I know who he is too. It's like a pretty common name, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not like out there. And he's also like, I keep thinking about Iron Man 3. Like that's what I always go to.
Guy Pearce.
That's right. Guy Pearce.
Why are we so bad at this?
I don't know. I'm usually much better at that, especially because he's in one of my favorite, like the Count of Monte Cristo. He's also in that, and so like I should have just known. Anyway, there it is. And Guy Pearce. This movie is the story of King George VI's unexpected ascension to the throne of the British Empire in 1836, and the speech therapist who helped the unsure monarch overcome his stammer. That's a pretty good synopsis. It's probably the best one we've had in a while.
Yeah, pretty accurate. Good to go.
Yeah, it's right there. I mean, it's not all about the story of King George VI, but certainly about his ascension and his stammer. This is a you pick. So
this is a me pick, 100%.
So you kind of did some weird shit this month with this because you got me on with Catch Me If You Can. I'd never seen it. I had never seen this movie from front to back at one time.
Alex batting 1.5 for 2.
That's right. I had seen all of this movie, but never in one sitting. And there's a reason for that, which we'll get into. But I'm actually going to let you lead off with this movie because of that. And I want to tell that story because it goes into a big part of how I'm going to rate this movie and my thoughts on this movie. So I'm going to let you kick it off.
Sounds good. So I have a love-hate relationship with this movie because it's kind of boring. We'll say like content-wise, what the story is. You have someone who is teaching, helping coach someone through a speech impediment. That's what this is, and that is pretty much front to back. And the time period that's happening is 1930s, 1940s Europe. So you've got a lot of stuff going on, and this movie does a great job of like sticking to its content, and it lets you know stuff that's happening, but it doesn't really directly tell you. What they stick to is speech impediment, teaching someone how to get over their stutter. And so that's like, really, this is what we're doing with this movie. This is a 2.5 hour, however long movie it is, about literally a speech coach. However, Geoffrey Rush found a way to make such a stupid premise for a movie highly entertaining. I'm shocked that he did not win an Oscar for this. I know he was nominated. He should have won because Geoffrey Rush is the reason why I like this movie. You put anybody else in there, I mean anybody else, it is going to be dog shit. And that's in the cast with Colin Firth, and we talked about Guy Pearce. Like, this is Helena Bonham Carter. This is a good cast. But if you don't have Geoffrey Rush in here, you don't have a movie. It is dog shit. But putting him in here makes it enjoyable, and that's why I will watch it. Now I go kind of a long time in between watches because it is kind of a slog. But his performance every single time is the reason why I put this movie in here. 100%.
Yeah. It's, you know, it's funny because you basically just gave my reason for not having watched this movie in full. Like, I sat down going, when it first came out, I remember, like, Casey and I were both like, well, we have to see this movie.
Yeah.
And then I don't remember why, I think, but we never went and saw it in theaters, which was odd for us because we normally did. And I don't remember why we didn't, and I can't recall, but I will say we sat down to watch it at home and I'm like, oh my God, this is boring. And the problem was, I'm with you, like, it's this double-edged sword because it has a fantastic cast, and for all of its boring shit, the acting is outrageous across the board. Like, it's so good. But the content, I'm like, okay, I get it. This dude's a prince that was never supposed to be king, that had a very hard father and very hard brothers, and had these expectations laid on him, and he had some trauma that caused him to stutter. And the trauma was his dad fucking yelling at his ass and being a dick to him because the expectations of who he is and what he's going to become. And then he had to become probably one of the most beloved monarchs in English history. So at least in modern era, right? So it's like, I get the story, but like, I just told the whole fucking story in a 30-second fucking blurb, and now I got to watch a 2-hour movie about them overcoming it. However, the parts that are entertaining in this movie, to your point with, you know, it's just Geoffrey Rush kills it. Colin Firth kills it. And together, riddled with some sprinklings of Helena Bonham Carter in there, just being like the nicest bitch on the planet. Like, it's just this conflagration of these phenomenal actors doing what they do best at peak levels amongst one of the most boring stories I've ever seen in my life, that they stretch for 2 hours. I couldn't fucking do it. And even Casey, who Colin Firth is like one of her top 5. She watch anything with Colin Firth in it. And I'm like, she couldn't. Like, we had to stop it. We're like, okay, we're 35 minutes in. I'm like, I can't. I got to take a break. So we would go do something else, or we'd watch another movie, and then we'd come back to it a couple of days later and watch another thing. It was hard. And then watching it this time, I was like, fuck me. Like, this is hard. I was so hard. I had to do other stuff. Like, I had to stop watching it in my main room and come in here to the office and watch it because I have dual screens. So I would put it on my main screen and then I would do some other things while I was watching it because I'm like, I'm so bored. I'm going to fall asleep because there's parts where I'm just like, this sucks. I can't. It's just, so it's really hard. This movie's rough for me because I love the things that I love a ton. And you're right. Geoffrey Rush steals this movie. Like, he makes it. And if it weren't for him, there's very little entertainment value to this movie without Geoffrey Rush. I will say Colin Firth has his moments too. And like, when he starts fucking screaming obscenities, like, that shit's great. And I was like, this is my kind of like, fuck, shit, cunt, fuck. I fucking love that shit, right? And that's one of the things that helped him, like, especially at the end when he's going through this big speech and you look up and you see Geoffrey Rush going, fuck, 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 like mouthing it. Like, that's a great moment. And I don't want to talk too much about the end yet because that's got a whole different speech for me. But like, yeah, dude, it's such a conundrum of a movie. Because what is good is amazingly good. But you have to slog through this like 2-hour movie about overcoming a stutter. And then yeah, but you have this friendship that's built, this unlikely friendship, and that lasted for their whole lives, right? Like,
Yeah. Oh, this story is fantastic. Like the actual story,
yeah,
and it like the movie pretty much follows what happened
sure,
as far as accuracy goes. But oh my gosh, like this, it is a slog to get through.
yeah,
100%. It is boring at times, but at the same time, I have this problem of I don't know what I would cut.
sure,
Right, like because they have this like, and the problem I think is with most of these biopics, whatever, you have this kind of, I would say, exciting story that's overall, and then there's boring parts in it.
yeah,
Problem with this one is the story's boring, and then there's the exciting parts in it. So to cut, you'd have to cut out the exciting bits
yeah,
because your source material is boring.
mm-hmm.
And I think it's kind of a flip flop of what we normally see with biopics, where it's more of a boring life story with the exciting parts in there. And you're like, oh, well, we could cut out the boring parts.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a reversal. Um, but it has such great, like, I mean, one of my favorite scenes is when he first like meets, right, calling for Geoffrey Rush, and he's like, I'm
Yeah,
gonna call you Birdie,
yeah,
right? Like, no, that's not my name. Yeah, it is Birdie. And it's so funny because at this time, right, this is royal family of England is, still ruling the world.
yeah,
Um, we kind of get a little bit of this where proper English doctors are not telling, Colin Firth what he has to do, the Duke of York what he has to do, because he's their boss, right? He's their
yeah,
ruler. They can't tell him what to do, type of a thing. And then you have the Australian, right, who's kind of like, fuck you.
yeah, yep,
And like, no, I'm gonna call you Birdie.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's the kind of thing that you almost need, and that's what the Duke of York needed, was someone to kind of be like, no,
yeah,
um, I'm gonna fix you, and in order to fix you, you have to let me fix you.
yeah, yeah. You got to let go of that privilege, right?
Yeah,
Like,
you gotta let go of you're the king, you're the heir to the throne. That goes bye bye
yeah,
when we're in this office.
yeah. You're not a prince here. You're a dude
Yeah.
with a stutter, and
Hmm.
that's yeah. And it's like I said, and that's what makes their interactions so good. And like, there are parts that are so powerful, like the moment where, because you're wondering, like, where does this guy come up with his like methods, right? Like, and why is he like, we get it now, especially under having a more modern, even than the 1930s, understanding of stuttering and speech impediments in general being typically not a mechanical thing, though those are part of it, right? There are some speech impediments that are very much mechanical, but there's usually some emotional things that have happened that have caused this. And I love the buildup that they have of finding out that he's not an actual doctor. That, and then the story from Geoffrey Rush is one of the most powerful moments, in my opinion, of this movie, where he talks about, you know what, I'm not a doctor, like I'm not a professional, like but I did this for the worst case scenario people, and I did it because they needed it and I cared about them, and these were fellow soldiers during a very shitty, terrible time. So doctors and these certificates can go fuck themselves, because I have practical application. I don't have someone that's taught me how to do it through a book or speculation or limited experience. And I especially, again, don't give a shit that you're a prince or a king, or you're a guy that has emotional damage that we need to work through and help you manage your stammer. Like, I just love that moment. It's like, I'm the best because of where and how I've learned to do this, like, period. And I never claim to be anything other than what I am.
Yeah. I never claimed to be a doctor. That's kind of a cool moment too, where Colin Firth character, I think, is like, you never claimed to be a doctor. Yeah, I did that. And he's like,
Yeah.
yep. And it kind of makes the whole, first name thing make sense on a whole
Mhm.
different level versus what it actually was. Like, we need to be comfortable with each other. It's like, no, you're calling me doctor, and I don't like that because I'm not actually a doctor.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's a weird thing when he first, because he's like, don't call me doctor. Like,
Yeah.
because you're like, wait, what? But then you find out later, obviously, that he's not. And yeah, I love, God, this is the thing. Like, I can praise so many pieces of this movie and then shit on it at the same time. But that's the like. But you're again back to your initial opening statement is that without Geoffrey Rush and how he played this character, it just doesn't work. It
No.
just does not work.
And I really hope the actual Lionel was exactly like this, to the point where
Yeah.
you have that moment where he's like hiding from his wife. he has the royal family in his
Yeah.
apartment.
He hasn't told her who he's
He
treating.
hasn't told her he's treating.
I love it. Absolutely love it. Well, and you have like Helena Bonham Carter repeats the same thing. Like it only jumps in with the wife, like Myrtle, and she's like, "It's your Royal Highness" the first time, and ma'am after that. Like I just love her character because she's like, I know that she's not gonna know, just like he didn't know how to do it. And it was just, yeah, I just love that moment. But to your point too, like he's hiding there, and I love when when Albert's like, "You're a coward." And he's like, "Yeah, I am." Because I'm like, I can relate to that. Like, so on so many levels, like you're like, "Nah, I'm not going out there."
Yeah. Well, it's a very cool moment because it's kind of that reversal, right? Because
Yeah.
up to this point, it's Geoffrey Rush is the one who's kind of like, "Hey, you gotta fix this. Stop being scared. Get over it," type of deal, and then just 180, and you can see, and it kind of I think helps the relationship grow to the point where it's like, okay, yeah, we both are scared. Things we're both human.
Yeah.
We can have a human relationship.
Yeah.
But it's just so funny. Like, you're a coward,
Yes, I am. Oh, it's so good. It's so, and that's like if I could just have those two characters interacting more on that level, I think it would have improved the movie. Like those, and I get that there's like this was a tense relationship, obviously, because of the separation, of their social status, plus like the fact that they're working on something that is a hindrance to this man's ability to do what he's supposed to do. And probably at that time, to his dad's point, King George's point, like because of modern technology, like there's no hiding anymore. Like you don't just get to be a face that waves on occasion and shows up and does a speech to a small group of people. Like you're touching the world every time you open your pie hole, and you have a hard time doing that in general. So it's just one of those things where that tension is there and they have to show that this isn't going to be a friendly, funny relationship. But I wish they would have found more ways to like insert some things like that. And I don't know if that's because like where it was based off, if there's like a book or if there's like like a biography or something that a lot of this content came from, or if it's just from stories. But to me, I think that would have helped this movie be a little less boring, is if you could have inserted some more of that levity between the two of them, feeling each other out, having moments of human moments versus doctor patient / doctor patient relationship piece. Because that's where it gets boring. I'm like, okay, great. They're going through all the speech analytics and like the me's and the workouts of the throat and then the hopping around and all the weird shit. And then they get in a fight because it's not working the way he wants it to, because he's not actually fixing the problem. He's just putting a kind of Band-Aid on it. But you got to overcome that emotional piece, or at least have a level of understanding so that you can move past the fear. So I get why they did it, but I wish, because those moments are so good between the two of them, I wish we could have gotten a little more of them. I think it would have helped the movie.
You saying that made me realize what I would cut. I figured it out. I would cut out everything with Guy Pearce.
Fair.
Like as much as good as he is and stuff like that, but those moments between, Colin Firth and Guy Pearce, where we don't have Geoffrey Rush or anything like that, where it's kind of like the leading the country, hey, you're fucking up, what the hell are you doing type of a thing. I think you could pull those out and make it better and make it just about the speech and the process to get there.
Yeah. Or even have, and I don't know, maybe they weren't this good of friends until later on in their relationship, but like he obviously gets him to talk about the shit that's going on with David. So like I don't need to see it on screen, them fighting about his future American twice divorced wife. He could tell it to Geoffrey Rush. That gives us more of those human moments between the two of them. I think that in and of itself might have solved that problem. And I get why we have those Guy Pearce moments, to be honest with you, because it shows that he goes back to the scared little boy being, lectured and broken by these people that are his betters, quote unquote. But yeah, I agree with you. I think you could have at least cut some of it.
Yeah,
If
you
not
could have
all
cut
of
a
it.
lot of it, and then it makes it short. It makes it a little bit more palatable for a one-time or like all in one sitting viewing.
Yeah.
Because those were the moments where I was just thinking about it, was where I was bored.
Yeah.
Because you didn't have Geoffrey Rush going, somebody important goes blah 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 blah. Then you say, and louder, they can't hear you.
Oh shit. So good.
Or like because that whole kind of like church scene as well, where he sits down in the throne. He's like, what
Yeah.
are you gonna do
Oh
about it?
fuck yeah. It's like it's just a chair. Somebody carved their name in this thing.
Like just this absolute disdain for pomp, right? And
Yeah.
you can see a little bit that Colin Firth, Prince Albert, has that same kind of thing because he's been raised in all his life, but he's that dutiful person, right? Where he's trying to be a good monarch, a good leader, a good king, but he hates the pomp as well.
Yeah.
And so you have that another way to grow it, but it goes back to Lionel, Geoffrey Rush's character, being able to recognize and read people that he's seen, so he doesn't need this big fancy degree from a university. It says he's a doctor. He can look at someone and spend a little bit of time with them and figure out what their problem is.
Yep.
And then attack that. And it's such great, and he does such a great job portraying it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you. I did. That is a funny moment. They carved their name in it. It's just a chair. Who won the supporting actor in that year? Was that Christian Bale in The Fighter that won
maybe that? Let's see.
Because that's
looking it up.
I can. I will. Yeah.
Christian Bale in The Fighter and Christopher Waltz is the one who Inglourious Bastards.
Oh yeah, Christoph Waltz.
Yeah, I mean, I still think Geoffrey Rush wins.
Or yeah, so Christian Bale won it for The Fighter that year. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I liked him in that movie, but I'm with you. I think Geoffrey Rush should have won.
The problem is nobody could sit through King's speech.
No shit. Though that's not entirely true either, because this is a perfect movie for the Academy.
Yeah.
Because those old white bastards, especially back then, they love this kind of fucking human condition fucking movie. But because Colin Firth won Best Actor for this, didn't he?
Oh, did he?
I think he did. Because I think it won like 6 awards or 10 awards, something like that.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. Which
I mean,
doesn't work for me. Like
that's not fair. That's not fair.
And don't get me wrong, Colin Firth was great. Like I said, I find myself some of my favorite shit is if you take him screaming the profanities, or like when he loses his temper, and the fact that Geoffrey Rush's character Lionel like pushes him to be pissed so that he can say to him, look, no fucking stammer when you're pissed, right? Like, get pissed because you stop stammering. Like, those moments, Colin Firth is great, but without Geoffrey Rush to play against,
he's not really all that good.
Yeah, he's not as memorable of a character. He's only as memorable as he is because of Lionel and Geoffrey Rush playing that character to push him and having the responses that he does. Because that's the other part, is every time Colin Firth has a great moment, Geoffrey Rush is there to reinforce that moment with a hilarious comment or a heartfelt moment right after it, or a moment of silence when Colin Firth walks away from him because he's pissed. And Geoffrey Rush doesn't even say anything. He just stands there and then walks away. I'm like, Jesus, it's so good. So yeah, that's kind of a fuck. I mean, the Oscars, look, I don't pay much attention to the awards anyway, because I think it's a flawed system. But Yeah, that doesn't work for me. Like, he should have
Yeah,
definitely
Geoffrey
won.
Rush is the one who makes this movie.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. For the layman, like, he's the only reason this movie's good. Like,
Oh, 100%.
yeah. Fuh. That's interesting. Um, I will say, so one of the things that really does impress me about this movie from the story perspective is the deep running story. Like, I have to speculate, right? So here's the question. We know that Albert becomes King George VI, wasn't ever meant to be. Like, if his brother hadn't had Wallace, we never get King George VI, probably. And by proxy, we may not have the longest reigning monarch in British history in Queen Elizabeth II, because that's dad.
Mm-hmm.
We just saw Queen Elizabeth. I mean, that the daughter, the oldest daughter that he's talking to, that's the future Queen of England that reigns for, what was it, 60 years or some
Oh, it was
shit? Like,
longer than that, wasn't it?
1950, when he died, I think in 53, 56.
All
She
the way
took
up to
over
2021,
20, I think it's 2022. Didn't she die last
2022.
year?
I don't even, yeah, probably. Yeah, so 60 something years. It's a
Yeah.
long ass time.
So Elizabeth II reign. February 1952. Oh God. So yeah, so till 2022. So she reigned,
70.
yeah, 70 years. Jesus. That's crazy. Yeah, so 6th of February 1952 is when she was coronated, and then she died in 2022. So wow. I don't think I ever realized she was only 25 when she took uh yeah, when she
The throne.
took the throne. Yeah, so 70 years. Exactly 70 years. Jesus.
It's a
Longest
long
reigning
time.
monarch.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, and here's the other question. So I asked that, and I bring that up to say, knowing how much impact that Lionel had on her father and his ability to overcome his speech, and he never got rid of the stammer, but he was able to manage it for his reign, right? And he became what a lot of people consider gave some of the best speeches, including the one we see at the end of this movie, that a monarch ever gave, right? So how much impact did that relationship then have on Queen Elizabeth, right? Because she was a great orator. Like, she didn't
Mhm.
do it very often, but when she did it, she was amazing. She gave some of the greatest speeches out there. And so it's really interesting to me, like, how much impact deeply or for long term did this relationship have on the royal family going forward? Because how many life lessons and things that she learned based on watching her dad go through this, and then obviously she probably had a relationship of some degree with Lionel. So how much of that friendship and relationship impacted even the current monarchy, right? So I find that shit very intriguing to think about,
Yeah,
because it had to have.
I have to imagine that it had a huge effect because I think like Lionel was a regular guest at the palace for years after this.
Yeah.
Like it became a family friend.
Yeah. Well, he was present at every speech
Yeah,
that the king ever gave. So he had to have been there a lot.
and then the strategy that goes into it, well, because you see that they're kind of playing out the speech like, hey, no, pause here works, so here's where you pause, and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. So I have to imagine she took advantage of that.
She's got to, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, it would be silly not to.
yeah, because she was also giving speeches before she became queen. Like, she was traveling. In fact, when her father died, I'm pretty sure her and Philip were traveling to Australia,
Everywhere.
of all places. So I mean, it's like, it was very interesting to me to think about, because, to be honest, the first time I watched this movie, I don't think it dawned on me, because I was watching it in pieces. I don't think it dawned on me that was Elizabeth, like, that this was Elizabeth's dad, right? Like, I don't think that ever, until I watched it this most recent time with all the way through, I was like, oh shit, this is Queen Elizabeth II. Like, this is the monarch we're watching as a child. Watch her dad go through this process of overcoming a stammer. Like, I didn't put that together until here.
Yeah, and it's kind of like that thing where this movie does a very good job of staying in its lane
Sure.
and lets you know about the outside world, but doesn't point you in that area. And it stays very much in this is the King's Speech, because you get the only clue is Elizabeth.
Yeah.
That's the only clue in this entire 2.5 hour movie. That's Queen Elizabeth II. Is he says her name.
Yeah. Well, and I don't even think it would have done, because she was one of the rare occurrences that she kept her name as queen. Like, when she became to reign, most of them, like Albert, changed their name to a more common king or monarchy name. But here she was one of the rare occurrences that kept her name as Elizabeth.
Can't keep Albert. It's too German.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, and that's like, there was only one Elizabeth before her. That's why she's Elizabeth II, which was the most famous queen, maybe other than herself now. But in pre-modern times, like, Elizabeth I was like the fucking queen, right? Like, she was, which is ironic because she wasn't supposed to be queen either. So it's like one of those things.
It's funny how that works out.
Yeah. Like,
it's almost like if you're not expected to take the throne, you appreciate it more or something.
Yeah. I mean, her Queen Elizabeth I's dad was another very controversial situation. Anyway, like, that's neither here nor there. But it's very interesting to look back over the British monarchy, and here you have this person that had, against all odds, probably should never have been king, and wasn't set up to be what would have been on the surface a successful king, even though he had the best temperament and the best knowledge base and the best, you know what I mean, for it. And like you said, he was dutiful, which you have to be that level. And you also see that with Elizabeth too, is that she got that sense of duty from her dad. So very intriguing when I thought of it big picture, even though, like you say, it's not like they shoved that shit in your face. And they could have been like, Elizabeth, you're going to become queen. So, well, and her dad died relatively young with his heart issue, but so it's just like, I don't know, it's very intriguing. So I couldn't help but think, like, how much of that impacted her and what she became and how she used those lessons. Because I would also imagine that if it worked so well for dad, he had to have been involved in, speech.
Everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I would. I mean, if I'm King George VI, I'm going, hey, I need you to teach these guys how to speak.
I think he found some college or something, like a speech.
Oh, really?
For after this, Lionel Logue did. So he probably got his, credentials from the King of England, and then nobody cares what school you went to or didn't go to.
Yeah.
If the King of England is your reference, you're good. You're good. You'll never find a job anywhere else again.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You're set. You're good. Oh, the guy that made, King George able to speak is now running a school. Let's go there.
Yeah. Might as well.
Yeah. It's interesting. I did just look, and they did it. Apparently Queen Elizabeth very much praised this film and the story that it told. So I'm assuming that means that it was relatively on point.
Yeah.
So yeah, it said she enjoyed a private screening, obviously. And that, yeah, she completely said it was great. Yeah. Anyway.
Very cool.
Very cool. I was just trying to see if they talked about
him helping the rest of the family.
Yeah, like if there was any kind of stories of her and him working together. Though, I mean, he was much older than King George, so I don't know how long he lived throughout, but that would take a lot more research, which I'll probably do now, because
it's an interesting story, and it does its job and gets you to go research.
Exactly, which we talked about in previous episodes. Like, that means that they did a good enough job telling their story. So, but But yeah, it was very long and kind of
It is
boring. But the acting is top notch
really, really good. If
across
it
the
had a
board.
better content or like a better story to tell, this has been phenomenal.
Sure.
But it's
Yeah,
hard
or
to
even
tell a
just a
good
more
story.
creative
Yeah.
way of interjecting the more entertaining pieces of content versus some of it that I'm like, I don't need that backstory. But okay, whatever.
All right, you ready to rate it?
Yeah, let's do it. You're first.
All right, I'm first. So if I was giving this a rating purely off of Geoffrey Rush, it's an 8 out of 5. Since I can't do that, I'm gonna settle at 3.5.
Mm.
I think that this movie does a phenomenal job as being a biopic.
Mm-hmm.
It gets you to go research, like we just talked about. It gets you to want to know more about the story. It does a very good job of containing itself within the story that it wants to tell, despite the fact that that's boring as fuck. I think that I will be watching this again, 100% with 3.5. I think that it's worth a watch at least once for everybody. I think you get something out of this movie by going and watching it, and that the Geoffrey Rush performance by itself would be worth the watch.
Yeah.
So yeah, 3.5 for me. I'll be watching it again, but yeah, it's very long.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing: it's the shortest of the 4 movies this month,
No, it's not. It's very long.
but it feels like it's the longest. Oh man. So yeah, it's wow. Yeah, it's rough. Apparently, just to add before I do my rating, there was a letter after Queen Elizabeth had passed away that they found that where she thanked directly Logue for the help that he had provided her family and herself. So obviously there was, obviously it doesn't go into detail what I'm reading, at least like what it was or how, like, you know, what it, how far into that, like what she said, but there was a posthumous thank you there that, that she wrote a letter to him, saying thanks for what he did. So it's very interesting. Apparently it's very in depth, but they obviously don't talk about it, but
Right.
Interesting. Like I said, I'm going to do some more research, see what I can find out. But that's one key to this movie. But I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to give it a 3.5. I think it had the potential to be higher if some creative editing was done, some shortening up. I think it's an interesting story. At its surface, I think they tried to make it really artistic for the. I think they were trying to win some Oscars with this, right? And I appreciate that. I get it. It worked. They won quite a few.
They won the wrong ones.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm also with you. Like, without Geoffrey Rush in this movie, it doesn't work. Like, I'm not watching it. You know what I mean? Like, I will stop watching because it's boring. And the story it's at its core very simple, but the moments that are very heartfelt are, I think, the most impressive to me. Like, again, I go back and I've said this a few times during this recording, but the two of them interacting together were the best parts of this movie. And I wanted more of that. When that wasn't happening on the screen, which in theory it should have been happening a lot, but when it wasn't, which was far more than it should have been, I was not interested, or not as interested, sometimes not interested at all. But when they were working together, holy shit, like I was all in 100%. So I don't know that I'll watch this movie in its entirety again. I think I would watch bits here and there of their interactions and like the moments, like the heartfelt moments, like the final speech. Man, what a moving, powerful moment, right? Like, because you're waiting and you can watch the British people as a whole being portrayed as waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? It's probably the most important speech he ever gave because it was the start of his reign in the middle of a wartime, right? And a major wartime. It doesn't get any more important than this. Everybody had heard him speak or struggled to speak many times before this. You see that awkwardness. They portrayed it very well in the movie. Everyone's listening and waiting with bated breath for him to have a struggle, and he doesn't. And you can go back and listen to this speech now from on recording, and they did a great job recreating it. And that moment to me was like, this is cool. Like that, the payoff for that for all the boredom I had for almost 2 hours, that 5 minutes was worth it, right? So very good, very interesting. Yeah. So 3.5 for me. Again, I don't know that I'll ever watch it in its entirety, but it's very much worth the watch. I agree with you. If you haven't seen this, you should watch it once, just for Geoffrey Rush. Captain Barbosa. Watch it for Captain Barbosa.
That's fair.
Yeah, there it is. So yeah, there's the King's Speech. Alec, tell everybody where they can find us when they're not listening to us talk about this British movie.
Ready to get canceled, JJ?
Uh-oh. Yes,
Thank you for shit balls tuning into our review of the King's Speech. A good watch with great acting. Shitballs, fuck cup ass. Thank you to our current patron, Cholula Water, for selecting it for our month of biopics. Shit. This is week 3 of November, and we have a great lineup coming for the last part of the month. So hit the subscribe button, shit, fuck, balls, ass, and hit the bell notifications so you don't miss out. Patreon is the place to get involved with the podcast, shit, fuck, and content. So head over there and join our crew of misfits. With that, I will kick it back to the Titan of Terror, the King of Crash, shit, JJ.
Oh, it's your best outro ever, dude. And it might get us canceled, and that's okay. It was worth it. Fuck, I didn't know if you had a different syndrome or if you just were stammering. Like, that shit was great. No, I loved it. But that's a wild generalization. It's probably more likely to get us canceled than you actually screaming out profanities and pretending to have a stammer you're working through. Because that's not at all what that particular. I'm not even going to say it. Anyway, with that, as always, we appreciate you tuning in. We'll catch you on the next one.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Cinematic out.
Whoa!